More than 3.5 years after 9/11, the New York City skyline remains a victory for al-Qaeda. There continues to be a gaping hole in lower Manhattan where the Twin Towers once stood. And plans to build a new Freedom Tower are now in serious trouble because the proposed location would expose it to truck bombings from the nearby West Side Highway. The problems have become so severe that developer Donald Trump is now calling for the Freedom Tower to be ditched and that the Twin Towers themselves be rebuilt with an extra floor to show America's defiance against terrorism. You'll hear from ordinary New Yorkers in just a moment, but first, here's Hardball correspondent David Schuster.
When the Twin Towers were completed in the early 1970s, some architects called them too simple. But the public grew to love the towers, and the buildings fast became worldwide icons of American strength and freedom. It's why al-Qaeda first targeted the Twin Towers in 1993 and then destroyed them on 9/11. In the aftermath, and with rescue workers still looking for survivors, some politicians spoke about American defiance and resolve and said the Twin Towers, just like the Pentagon, should be immediately rebuilt. New York Governor George Pataki had another idea. He named a commission to consider a modern architectural replacement. The final 6 designs were all described by media critics as disappointments, and they bore no resemblance to the Twin Towers. But the commission went forward, deliberating in secret and then publicly announcing they had chosen a twisting windmill-top building by architect Daniel Libeskind. It was called the Freedom Tower. As the commission worked on building plans, New Yorkers were soon captivated by a display at Ground Zero. 2 bright lights in place for months that reminded everybody of the icons knocked down. Meanwhile, the Freedom Tower began to run into problems. Critics, including Donald Trump, said it looked like a skeleton. Engineers said the top of the structure was impossible, and reporters noted the occupied space would only go up to about the 75th floor. In other words, even if the antenna technically made the tower the world's tallest building, New Yorkers would have a better view from a dozen other Manhattan buildings. A year ago, members of the New York Fire and Police Departments began to weigh in, calling the Freedom Tower design an embarrassment. And at last summer's groundbreaking, several New York politicians were notably absent, including former Mayor Rudy Giuliani and Senator Hillary Rodham Clinton. And last week, Governor Pataki announced the entire project would have to be redone because the tower, as envisioned, would be too close to major thoroughfares and thereby vulnerable to truck bombs. The bureaucratic fumbling has enraged New Yorkers, many of whom believe the Freedom Tower was a bad idea to start with and that the Twin Towers should be rebuilt. One group recently unveiled this 9-foot-tall, $500,000 architectural model. These Twin Towers, offset from the original footprints, include a complete memorial site plan with streets and nearby buildings to illustrate the structural possibilities.
It's something that we had to really show was actually doable and was also acceptable, and I believe that has been demonstrated by the response from the public.
Gardner's website, makeandwhyandwhyagain.com, has been flooded with tens of thousands of emails, some noting that his Twin Tower building plans and blueprints are more detailed than anything publicly released by the group behind the Freedom Tower. But putting aside the argument over which project could be built sooner, there is the larger debate. What is it that America stands for? And now, 3.5 years after the worst terrorist attack on U.S. soil, what is America's message to the world? I'm David Schuster for Hardball in Washington.